All right, thank you. And that brings us to the last talk in this session, which is going to be given by Matthias Riße, and it's titled, I will not say it, I'll leave the pronunciation to you, but it's about a forge that has git-annex capabilities. Matthias is working at the Research Center in Jülich for quite some time, and he has a master's degree in applied mathematics and computer science, is a software developer, an admin, data manager, technical support person, and a FOSS enthusiast on top of that. And he maintains the thing that he's going to pronounce in a second. And he loves cats, but is allergic.
Yeah, thanks for the introduction. So I'm the maintainer of Forgejo-aneksajo, which is, I call it the git-annex/DataLad forge. The DataLad part is by extension. It doesn't actually have anything DataLad specific in it. It's just Forgejo extended with git-annex support. So who of you uses Git regularly? That's almost everyone. Who of you uses git-annex or DataLad very regularly? That is 3/4? I don't know. And who of you has used Git Forge before, like GitHub, GitLab, Codeberg? Yeah, that's almost everyone again. So if you've raised your hands 3 times, then you can probably stop after this headline, and you should be able to deduce yourself what this is and realize or realize not why it might be cool. So to start with, I want to take a step back and talk about my motivation of why I'm doing this. So my kind of vision of how repeatable, reproducible, traceable, discoverable research should happen is that if you write a publication somewhere in a journal, I think there should be an accompanying publishable artifact that describes like data, code, computational environment used to produce it, so that if there's a result in a paper, a plot, a table, whatever, anyone should be able to go from that result back to the process of how it was created with all intermediate steps and arrive at what data was used, or even how was the data that was used acquired. So maybe a description of the drone flight that collected that, I don't know, in situ data. That's very in line with what we've heard from Jarek this morning, I think. So yeah, that means we have like 3 fundamental parts to keep track of in like this artifact, which is code, data, and the ambient environment around it in which you have worked. So in the code world, if you're a software developer, you are already using Git to keep track of your code, probably, or some other version control system. I think 99% of developers do that. The nice thing about git-annex and DataLad is that it extends the existing system, and you have one unified approach to do it, which especially helps if there's some kind of tight coupling between code and data, which, to be honest, in most analysis projects or something like that, if one person is working on it, you aren't going to decouple code and data too much. It's probably your analysis code depends on how your data is organized. And the ambient environment around it, we already have solutions for that too. So we've heard containers are one option. There are sufficiently advanced package management solutions like Nix, like Geeks, like if you're in the Corner Forge ecosystem, there's Pixie, which can encode the environment such that you can reproduce it at a later point in time into your repository. And then you have exactly all these 3 parts encoded in one artifact. So yeah. Last point, I'm not just, I don't think this is just important for publications, but also for yourself and others in the future, because if you have a PhD student who's working on a project, or you yourself have worked on a project years ago and you want to revisit that, I wouldn't be able to get back into a project without having recorded what I did, essentially. Which brings me to this point. So this is a repository, and I'm just gonna open it, which I've worked on a few months ago, which was preparing input data for, in this case, do I have to make that bigger? Preparing input data for a climate model run, in this case, for in the context of CMIP 7. And I just want to use it as an example of how you can create such an artifact. So in this case, I have a README. That's a good starting point to look into. I've described the structure here. All automation is implemented in make files. So we've heard a few things about remaking and that sort of stuff. Make is another option. There's a lot of tools that you can adapt and bring into the mix. But in this case, I've produced some outputs. I can click into that. I can see that, for example, this is some greenhouse gas forcing data set, which contains these variables on a longitude-latitude grid. I can go into the history of that, right? Not the commit, but the history of this file. I can see I've renamed that in the past. I can browse further and see that was created by a DataLad run. I have the command here that was used to produce it. And if I go back to the code and look at the make file, then I actually see that in this case, I've used make to make as a layer around DataLad run, in this case, to run commands. I don't know if I would do it that way again, but again, this topic has been discussed a few times today already, and it's still like workflows are subject to experimentation as well. So recording is an important part, not exactly doing it in the best possible way. Yeah, and that's sort of how such a publishable artifact could come to be and look in the end. In this case, I've used Pixie as package manager here, so this contains like a log file with the dependencies that this project needed, which exactly records the environment, and anyone cloning this project could go and use Pixie install to get the environment again. But you're here to talk about Forgejo-aneksajo, so my point is that this is all kind of coming from workflows that are already established in software development practices. So when we're already looking at that, why aren't we looking at how to organize projects or how to collaborate in projects too, at how it's done in software development? And that's one way to how, especially in the open source world, projects organize and collaborate is the Forge model. So Forges, Git Forges are essentially a central collaboration hub for projects. It's a place to put your canonical repository, a place to discuss directions of the project, issue trackers, bug reports. I mean, you all raised your hand, so you probably know what I'm talking about. It's not the only way to organize, but I think GitHub has shown us that it can work pretty well. And when you eliminate the big issue with GitHub, which is centralization, then it's even better. So that brings me to the point, what is Forgejo-aneksajo? It is essentially just a soft fork of Forgejo. Forgejo is a self-hostable GPL licensed Git forge. If you've not heard of Forgejo before, but of Gitty or Gox, those are predecessors. So Forgejo forked from Gitty and Gitty forked from Gox. And Gox was the OG open source clone. I think it started as a clone of GitHub essentially back in the day. The primary goal of the project is just to integrate git-annex into Forgejo as intuitively as possible. And that sums it up pretty well. So Forgejo-aneksajo is a git-annex /DataLad forge. I've brought a little small overview of what like the features are you get. So from Forgejo, you get all the collaboration stuff here. You have your repositories, pull requests, issue trackers, a wiki. There's a CI system directly attached to Forgejo or developed as part of the project, which is Forgejo Actions. I'm going to come back to that later as well. So, and the Forgejo-aneksajo part is really just git-annex storage integration and UI integration of like annex-specific concepts like annexed files. And of course, you interact with that with all the usual tools, DataLad, git-annex, git. I want to give a short like history of how this came to be because I cannot claim credit for everything here. So around April 2022 at the institute I work at, IC4, in Forschungszentrum Jülich, we started with initially with an instance of gnode's gox, which again I mentioned gox. It was a fork of that, adding more than just git-annex support. I think it was developed in like the context of this gnode service. Yeah, they added git-annex support. It's usable with git-annex with DataLad, but they also added like DOI services and that stuff, which made it not exactly a good fit for our use case, but it was what I knew of. And it was unfortunately already a bit dated at that time. So no, not really actively maintained. But to my knowledge, it's still the backbone of this Gin service, so it's still working. But because that wasn't the perfect fit, I searched for an alternative, and I found out about a soft fork of Gitty at Neuropoly University in Montreal. I'm sorry, I do not speak French. I cannot pronounce that. But yeah, they initiated a soft fork of Gitty, which had at its goal only to add git-annex support into it. It was a relatively small and really easy to grasp patch set. I want to do a shout out to Nick, nickname Kosu on GitHub, who started this, because without him, Forgejo-aneksajo wouldn't exist either. Unfortunately, maintenance of that stopped in September 23. So last year at Distribits, we came into discussion about that, and I decided to fork and rebase on Forgejo, and since then have been maintaining this project. At that time, we started at version 7 of Forgejo. They just recently, at the beginning of 24, had hard forked from Gitty themselves, so a lot of forking here. So it seemed like a good base to build on. Since then, there have been like 6 major releases. Version 13 was just released last week. So yeah, it's very actively developed, and honestly, I cannot complain about maintenance of Forgejo-aneksajo in this case, because I just regularly rebase it and have relatively little effort with that. Of course, there were also new additions to Forgejo-aneksajo since then. So one thing that Joey didn't mention in this talk with regard to new git-annex features is P2P HTTP, which I think is very cool. I'm going to go into more detail later. We have uploads to the web interface now. We have just merged on Monday, because I was procrastinating on preparing these slides, is now git-annex enabled templates. PRs with annex content now work, and then there were some general improvements to the UI integration, a bunch of bug fixes, that sort of thing. So git-annex enabled templates, first thing. Again, coming back to Yoda. I've prepared like a little template repository from the DataLad Yoda configuration, and now it's possible to use this template and create like a repository from that. Say I want the Git content from this template, create a repository, and now I have newly instantiated repository with the content of this Yoda template. So going back to the template, you see there was a placeholder here in the project, there was a placeholder here in the DataLad UUID. Those have been filled in, so it now has a properly initialized UUID v4 for the data set. And I can now start adding, thanks to the direct upload to git-annex to the annex. Take like some logo file, commit that, and all from the web interface I can add annex content into this repository, which is a new combination of these two features allows that to do that. Yeah, P2P HTTP, essentially git-annex operations via HTTP. So Joey adapted the existing P2P protocol, which I think is spoken over SSH anyway, to like a HTTP API. I've just made Forgejo essentially a reverse proxy to git-annex P2P HTTP while handling the authentication part on the Forgejo side. So you can, it follows all the usual authentication options you have in Forgejo. If you give someone read access to the repository, they will have read access to the via P2P HTTP to the annex. Write permissions work the same. Access tokens work the same, and you just have to configure your repository on a Forgejo-aneksajo instance via HTTP URL and use a relatively up-to-date git-annex version, and it will just work. Especially useful is if your clients are forbidden to establish outgoing SSH connections. So this is an issue we have at Forschungszentrum, because the HPC systems are not allowed to do outgoing SSH connections. Yeah, so that's why I think this is an important feature. Which brings me to some useful Forgejo features. There is an integration with git credential OAuth. So basically it has a pre-configured OAuth application for this credential helper. Which means you can, if you have git credential OAuth installed and you run this one command here, then all future git operations will automatically use an OAuth authorization flow to authenticate with your Forgejo instance. And that means you say you want to push to the repository, and if you don't yet have an access token cached, then it will give you a link to open in a browser. You say, I approve this application, and then it gets the access token, and it works. So you don't have to manage like long-standing, long-lived keys like SSH keys or access tokens yourself, but can get them on demand in like a short-lived configuration. And thanks to the integration of P2P HTTP, this just works for git-annex as well. One thing to note, Forgejo does not support the OAuth to device flow yet, which would be useful for headless systems, like the mentioned HPC systems. That's something I might want to address at the hackathon. We'll see. Another useful Forgejo feature, we've seen that in the beginning when I showed you this CMIP input project. You can customize how your Forgejo instance visualizes individual data types. In this case, the script files, which contain like gridded or not necessarily gridded, but it's often used for like atmospheric data. In this case, it contains like a set of parameters here: temperature, U and V, wind components, ozone, whatever. And you can use custom file previews to get some kind of informative overview of this file, whatever you need in your domain. In this case, it's just like what variables are in there, on what grid, in what resolution, and what time steps. Yeah, so that's another very useful Forgejo feature, which just works with git-annex. Another one, push to create. Very useful if you regularly create like new repositories on the command line. You can just add a Forgejo URL as a remote, push to it, and if your user is authorized to create the repository, add that URL, then it will be just created and pushed to, which is very useful if you have like some automated workflow creating repositories. Forgejo actions, not just CI. I'd like you to think about Forgejo actions as a generalized workflow execution engine. You can really automate anything with it, what you want. In this case, there's this error5 dataset from ECMWF that I've packaged up into a DataLad dataset, and I've defined a workflow that regularly updates it, that runs weekly on a schedule, and pushes to the repository itself. So you can really do any kind of workflow in it that you want automated. Yeah, so Forgejo is really an active and solid basis. That's the only thing I want to say with this. With this slide over the last year, there have been like 153 authors. There's a list here. Over 2,000 merge pull requests, so it's really actively being developed, and I think it's a good basis to build a data collaboration hub on. Some stats on the patch set. Forgejo-aneksajo is surprisingly small, so it's just like, I don't know, 4,400 changed lines of code in it's not the latest release, but the release before that. I didn't update the slide. And 65% of these changes are actually in integration tests. So the actual production code is pretty small, and there are a lot of tests for it, which makes me pretty confident in being able to maintain this into the future. Some lessons from maintaining soft fork: do not touch the database schema. That way lies pain. Writing code in insertion-only fashion makes maintenance easier because you are less likely to encounter merge conflicts. So that has been pretty useful. I'm using a rebase-based workflow, so which keeps the patches together. I think that's nicer than having like a history full of merges in this case. And I can highly recommend checking out mergeref and re if you are also in a situation in which you regularly have to rebase. Or actually do conflict resolution at all. You can try it out yourself. So there is this demo instance on demo.forgejo-aneksajo.org. It's open for registration. You can just type in your username you want, password, and register. There's enough storage space to play with it, like I think 300 gigabytes. It resets nightly, so don't store anything important there. It will be gone. You can run your own. I have container images available on Codeberg in the Codeberg container registry. So, which, by the way, Codeberg is running Forgejo itself, which you can just pull and run. Source repository is also on Codeberg, so you can find it there. Or if you have any questions, you can get in contact with me. That's my email address, or on Matrix or Mastodon. So future outlook, I'm pretty hyped about what's coming to Forgejo in the future. And we will by default profit from it because we're based on Forgejo. So there's federation coming. This is like a long time in the works already and a long way to go as well, but it's being worked on, especially by MISA, I think. And I'm pretty hyped to see if we can get like a decentralized federated data ecosystem from that. Also, newly added storage quotas. They have gotten some important fixes in the release last week, and I haven't tried them out yet, but I think they should actually just work with git-annex content, and then you have like a quota system that you can apply to users to limit how much space they take. The Forgejo Actions runner received a lot of attention lately. I mentioned Forgejo Actions too. So it's no longer considered alpha quality software and is ready for production as of August this year. So that's reassuring too. One big question is, will this be upstreamed into Forgejo properly? There have been some discussion about that. I think this would be a longer process that could be done incrementally, and I would love to see that, but it hasn't been started yet really, so maybe in the long term. Last but not least, I want to say thank you to everyone working on Forgejo. I don't know if anyone is here or in the stream, but really thank you for working on it, because your work is making this possible too. That's it.